Waking up in the crashed car felt like I had woken from one nightmare and entered another. I couldn't remember how I got there. All I knew was that something terrible had happened to Alice.
If you're a fan of The X-Files, Twin Peaks, or The Twilight Zone, you're going to want to pick up Alan Wake if you haven't already. Alan Wake was released exclusively for Xbox 360 in 2010 and created by Remedy. It had an unusually long development period of 5 years, but it was definitely worth the wait. The game plays out as if it was a modern TV show complete with cliffhangers, plot twists, comic relief, which I think the game could have done without, and even utilizes some very cool pop songs. It's broken up into 6 episodes with 2 DLC episodes entitled The Signal and The Writer. We won't be covering the DLC here. Game is visually stunning. The gameplay is a little frigid. I wish there had been a melee option. But that's not what Alan Wake is really about. Alan Wake is about the story, which makes sense since you're playing as a writer. In the game, you are Alan Wake, a famous New York City writer who has decided to vacation with his wife in a Pacific Northwest little town called Bright Falls.
Let's act like we're on vacation.
Upon arriving at the cabin, Alice, Alan's wife, is ripped away by a mysterious force and plunged deep into the lake below. Alan dives in after her, but strangely wakes up a week later in a car crash, only being able to remember that his wife was abducted.
I couldn't remember how I got there. All I knew was that something terrible had happened to Alice.
This sets Alan off on a desperate and relentless search for his wife, and along the way, Alan has to use light, revolvers, flares, flashbang grenades, and flare guns to battle the Taken, people possessed by an evil darkness who can only be stopped with light and bullets. Alan Wake at its heart is a mood game. It employs thick, creepy atmospherics, a very strong and clever narrative, a suspenseful score, and riveting slow-mo sequences.
When I saw the river below, something uncoiled itself inside my head. I realized that I'd have to find a way across. I didn't even want to look at the water.
There is plenty of running through endless moonlit woods with dense fog, menacingly tall twisted trees, gaping caverns, and inky dark villains that jump out at you from nowhere. And all the meanwhile, you are brandishing nothing but a flashlight and revolver to battle and navigate it all. There is enough eerie, rickety, turn-of-the-century abandoned buildings, crawling with the Taken, thirsty for your blood, to satisfy the most hardcore horror fan. As you play through the game, it really does feel like you're playing through a Stephen King novel. In fact, there are some homages to Stephen King and other horror writers in the game. The characters of Bright Falls and the protagonist's interaction with them at times comes off so offbeat that it must have been intentional. That, and the fact that the game does indeed take place in a Pacific Northwest town, gives Alan Wake heavy and welcome shades of the TV show Twin Peaks. Take this scene, for example. Alan and the sheriff are running side by side through the town shooting the Taken, when someone from an apartment above a store tells them to keep it down. Instead of Alan and the sheriff warning this person that he should protect himself, they basically just tell him to go back to bed.
We can make it through the bookstore.
What's wrong with you people? Keep it the hell down or I'll call the sheriff.
Oh, hi, Doc. I've got it. Don't worry about it.
Sarah, about time somebody showed up. All this shooting in the air is idiotic. One of these days they'll kill somebody. And over Deerfest.
I know. Go back to bed. He's got a point, Wake.
The game is not strictly a survival/horror game. There is plenty of down-to-your last bullet or flare moments, but the game is often punctuated with non-combative sequences that build the story of a man wrestling with internal demons as well as external ones.
Killers to dull the pain. In one of my finer moments of self-deception, I swore to quit drinking. The sunglasses made the world look bearable. Now I could keep my eyes open without feeling like a vampire in the sun. I wasn't sure I'd make it out there without some painkillers. The pills worked fast. The prospect of being awake started to seem bearable again.
At some points in the game, you're led to believe that this might not actually be happening to Alan at all. There is definitely a rubber reality feel to the game. And to highlight that, at some points, you get to come across televisions airing an episode of a show called Night Springs. It's a black and white show that's obviously meant to be the Twilight Zone, complete with a Rod Serling-like introduction. Most of the episodes deal with the nature of reality and alternate dimensions, thereby hinting at the deeper subtext of Alan Wake.
Science. It bestows immortality on those who advance it to elevate all of mankind. Newton, Einstein, Sagan, princes among men. But the price for such a legacy is steep indeed. In Night Springs. Tonight's episode, a quantum suicide. If our lives are already written, it would take a courageous man to change the script. Having called a press conference, Dr. Barclay Colvin is about to demonstrate that very courage.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I am Dr. Barclay Colvin, and I'm glad so many of you could join me here at the Moorcock Institute. Tonight, I'm going to give a practical demonstration of the many worlds interpretation. As you can see, this is a loaded 9mm pistol. It shall be part of a thought experiment. And now, a real experiment, known as a quantum suicide.
Did he say suicide? Is that a real gun? He's kidding, right?
Please, stay calm. There is no risk. Observe what occurs when I place the weapon against my own forehead. Now, you might think this round is merely a dud. Not so. Observe the flower pot. And yet, I myself cannot be harmed with this gun. With each pull of the trigger, 2 new realities branch off. One in which the weapon didn't fire, and one where it did. With my machine here, I have ensured that this reality is always the former. I have bestowed upon myself quantum immortality. Under no circumstances can this gun kill me.
So wait. What you're saying is that every time you pull the trigger, in another reality, you die?
Yes, of course, but that's completely trivial. There's an infinite number of things that could happen at any moment, and they always do happen somewhere. The point is, this one thing did not happen here.
You're insane, Colvin.
Insane? Insane?
Hey, was this thing supposed to be plugged in? I stumbled on it.
You fools! Gaze upon quantum immortality.
Poor Dr. Colvin, felled by his own hubris or the ignorance of the masses. Perhaps he should have left the crate unopened, the decaying atom unobserved. Curiosity often kills the cat in Night Springs.
If you're patient enough, make sure you stop and listen to a radio anytime you come across it. You'll get deeper insight into the affairs of Bright Falls. You might even be introduced to a cool song you never heard before, such as I was when I heard Up Jumped the Devil by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
You have a good night now.
The only thing I think the game could have done without is the comic relief of Barry Wheeler.
That one saw the light, huh? You didn't like that one? A tough audience. Well, I got plenty more.
What are the Christmas lights for?
Protection, man. Like garlic against vampires.
I get that the creators of Alan Wake were trying to make it like a modern TV show, so therefore they thought they needed the comic relief, but they created such a beautifully moody, rich, and atmospheric game that anytime Barry Wheeler shows up with his stupid bright red bubble jacket, it takes you out of that mood. It stands in stark contrast to the rest of the attitude of the game. But I think Remedy got that message because when Alan Wake American Nightmare came out, which, by the way, is not a sequel to Alan Wake, it's a standalone game, that game had a much more homogeneous tone to it. It had no comic relief. Barry Wheeler had only maybe about a 5-second role in the game. So, once again, if you're a fan of atmospheric horror, blended with maybe some psychological thriller elements and peppered in WTF moments, you're not going to want to miss Alan Wake. All right, make sure you go out and get the game. You should be able to get it pretty cheap now that the Xbox One is out. If you don't have an Xbox 360, you should be able to pick that up cheap, too. And if you're already a fan of Alan Wake, and you want Alan Wake 2, like all of us fans do, you could go to www.corrosiveradio.com and take a poll telling Remedy that we want Alan Wake 2.